For over a century, the gaslit alleys of Whitechapel have held a dark secret, cloaking the identity of history's most infamous serial killer, Jack the Ripper. The gruesome slayings of at least 5 women in the autumn of 1888 terrified London and have fascinated criminologists and historians ever since. But what if the tools of modern investigation could finally pierce the veil of time and point a finger at the true culprit? Through the lens of contemporary criminology, we can re-examine the evidence and the suspects, applying techniques that were unimaginable to the detectives of Scotland Yard. By building a profile based on the killer's methods, victim selection, and geographical patterns, we can narrow down the list of potential candidates. This isn't just about dusty old case files, it's about applying behavioral science and forensic logic to a mystery that has endured for more than 130 years. Let's start with one of the most prominent suspects, a man named in the margins of a police official's memoirs, Aaron Kosminski. Kosminski was a Polish hairdresser who lived in Whitechapel, placing him squarely within the geographical heart of the murders. He suffered from severe mental illness, experiencing auditory hallucinations and a paranoid fear of others, which eventually led to his institutionalization in an asylum. From a modern profiling perspective, Kosminski fits certain criteria. His documented hatred of women and his homicidal tendencies, noted by asylum officials, align with the ferocity of the attacks. The killer's ability to navigate the labyrinthine streets of Whitechapel with ease suggests an intimate local knowledge, something Kosminski undoubtedly possessed. The murders ceased around the time he was institutionalized, which is a compelling, albeit circumstantial, piece of evidence. However, the case against Kosminski is not airtight. While his mental state was volatile, there's no concrete evidence directly linking him to the crimes themselves. Much of the suspicion relies on the second-hand account of Chief Constable Melville Macnaghten, who named him as a suspect years after the fact. Without a confession or definitive forensic link, Kosminski remains a strong possibility but not a certainty. Next, we turn our attention to another compelling figure, Montague John Druitt. Druitt was a barrister and schoolteacher who came from a respectable background, a stark contrast to the poverty of Whitechapel. His body was found floating in the River Thames in December 1888, shortly after the final canonical murder. His own family suspected he was the killer, and his death coincided perfectly with the end of the Ripper's reign of terror. The theory goes that Druitt was leading a dark double life, his respectable public persona hiding a monstrous secret. The pressure of his hidden deeds, or perhaps the fear of being discovered, may have driven him to take his own life. This narrative provides a neat and tidy conclusion to the murder spree, which is perhaps why it has remained so popular. Yet, modern profilers might question this. While the timing of his death is suspicious, there is absolutely nothing in Druitt's known history to suggest such violent and sadistic tendencies. He lived miles away from Whitechapel, and it's questionable whether a man of his standing could have roamed the area unnoticed, covered in the evidence of his horrific acts, without raising any suspicion. His connection to the area is tenuous at best, making him a less likely candidate when viewed through the lens of geographical profiling. Then there is the physician, the man of medicine. Several doctors were suspected at the time, as the surgical precision of some of the killer's mutilations suggested a degree of anatomical knowledge. One name that often comes up is Dr. Francis Tumblety, an American Indian herb doctor who was in London during the murders. He was a known and flamboyant misogynist who kept a collection of anatomical specimens. Tumblety was even arrested on unrelated charges of gross indecency during the time of the murders but fled the country back to the United States before he could be questioned further. His hatred for women was well documented, and his medical background makes him a person of interest. He had the potential knowledge to perform the mutilations described in the autopsy reports. But again, the evidence is purely circumstantial. Being a misogynist with a medical background does not make one a serial killer. His brief presence in London and his hasty departure are suspicious, but there's no evidence placing him at the scene of any of the crimes. He fits a certain profile, but the direct links are missing, leaving him as another intriguing but unproven suspect. Perhaps the most sensational and audacious suspect is one who wasn't even in the country, Herman Webster Mudgett, better known as H.H. Holmes, America's first infamous serial killer. Holmes was a con artist and murderer who operated a murder castle in Chicago, a hotel he designed with secret passages, gas chambers, and a crematorium to dispose of his victims. The theory suggests that Holmes traveled to London in 1888, committed the Whitechapel murders, and then returned to America to continue his gruesome career. This is a fascinating idea, linking two of the 19th century's most notorious criminal figures. Holmes was certainly capable of such brutality. His cruelty and lack of empathy were boundless. He was a master of disguise and deception, and it's conceivable that he could have operated in London without being identified. However, modern criminology largely dismisses this theory. There is no credible evidence, such as ship manifests or travel records, that places Holmes in London during the autumn of 1888. The methods of killing are also vastly different. Holmes was a systematic killer who lured his victims into a controlled environment, whereas the Ripper was an opportunistic predator who attacked in public, albeit in the dead of night. The psychological profiles, while both deeply disturbed, do not align perfectly. The Holmes theory makes for a great story, but it lacks the factual foundation required for serious consideration. So, where does this leave us? After sifting through the prime suspects with a modern criminological lens, one individual begins to stand out more than the others. While the case is not definitively closed, the evidence increasingly points back to Aaron Kosminski. Recent forensic analysis has added a new, compelling layer to this old mystery. A shawl, said to have been found near the body of Catherine Eddowes, one of the Ripper's victims, has been the subject of intense genetic testing. In 2019, a study published in the Journal of Forensic Sciences claimed to have found mitochondrial DNA fragments on the shawl that matched both Eddowes and a living descendant of Aaron Kosminski's sister. This finding seemed to be the smoking gun that historians had been seeking for over a century. This forensic link, connecting a suspect to a victim's personal item from the crime scene, is the most powerful piece of physical evidence we have ever had in the Ripper case. It corroborates the geographical and psychological profile that already made Kosminski a strong suspect. A mentally ill local man, with a known hatred of women, who was physically linked to a victim's possession at the time of the murders. Of course, the DNA evidence is not without its critics. The shawl's provenance is debated, with no official record of it being collected as evidence at the time. Contamination over the decades is a significant concern, and mitochondrial DNA, which is passed down the maternal line, is not as specific as nuclear DNA. It doesn't identify an individual but rather a maternal lineage. Despite these caveats, the convergence of evidence is powerful. When we combine Chief Constable Macnaghten's suspicion, Kosminski's psychological profile, his geographical proximity, the cessation of the murders upon his confinement, and now the controversial but compelling DNA evidence, the case against him becomes the strongest we have. We may never know with 100% certainty. The mists of time are thick, and the truth may be forever lost in the dark, cobbled streets of Whitechapel. But through the application of modern science and profiling, the shadowy figure of Jack the Ripper has perhaps taken a more definite shape. The evidence, when viewed in its totality, suggests that the face of this historical monster may well have been that of Aaron Kosminski. Thank you for watching. If you're fascinated by the deep dives into history's greatest mysteries, make sure to subscribe to Historical Repo for more. We're always digging up the past to bring you the truth.